Brace yourselves for the Middle-Aged Fat Lasses podcast.
Welcome to our podcast. This is Cecil and Simons, the two Sarahs. This time we're going to be talking about periods.
Well, I was talking to my brother about this yesterday and I was saying it is a podcast about things to do with, women's lives. And he went, what, like periods? And I was like, yes! Periods. More than half the world's population menstruate at some point in their lives. And yet we're only just beginning to talk about it openly and without sort of shame or dread or whatever. I think that's worth celebrating, isn't it?
Do you know, when I first explained to my son about periods, and he was only a little boy, we're very open about everything, as I'm sure you can imagine. And he was like, and this happens every month. He was just absolutely gobsmacked. And he said, if that was happening to me, I would talk about it all the time. He was just amazed that it isn't like the topic of conversation for all women always. He had a few confusions between private and secret. He felt like it was secret. Women weren't talking about it because, you can't talk about that.
Do you know that? But that was my experience when I was really very young. There was one time we were staying in a hotel. We were on holiday. So I must have been about 6 or 7. And my mum asked me to get some cotton wool out of the hotel bedroom. And I came down with a pack of sanitary towels. And my mother was absolutely mortified. And I mean, she was not a shy woman. She didn't hold back, but I sort of presented her in this hotel dining room with a packet of sanitary towels. And she was very upset because at that time, and that would be sort of early 70s, periods were a secret.
How did you find out that periods existed?
Do you know, I really can't remember not knowing about them. My brother, again, we were about 6 or 7, finding a tampon and him saying, I think it's for cleaning men's willies. We obviously didn't talk about it as openly as perhaps I would fondly imagine. I do remember having the talk at school with the school nurse. Well, you were at a girls' school, so it'd be different for you.
I found out about periods the same time that I was given a very inaccurate understanding of what the birds and the bees are, or more accurately, the dogs. Because I was around at my cousin's, and my cousin's dog, Snoopy, who I thought was a boy, but apparently was a girl, was on heat. So was dropping blood around. And also they had to be really, really careful that, there wasn't a line of gentleman dogs in the garden planning to have a go.
Yeah.
And it was all very confusing. I didn't know what was going on. So I went home and I asked my mum, what is going on with this dog where there's blood coming out of it? And, they're frightened about boy dogs coming. It was at that point that she gave me her, which was probably age appropriate, version of the birds and the bees, which was that ladies have blood coming out of them, which means that they can get pregnant. And so obviously, how do you get pregnant? Well, the man has some seeds. And the lady has eggs, which already I was thrown. Because I was like, well, is this gardening or baking or what? What is going on? And by the end of it, my understanding was that at some point, some creature crawls out of the man's bum and goes and lives in the lady.
That's quite interesting because I knew about sex and I knew that a man's willy went into a lady's vagina. But I thought you had to be asleep to do it. And I kind of had this idea that a man's willy would just wriggle down his pajama leg.
Neither of them would know about it. It was like Santa. Or the tooth fairy.
No, I think I did know that you could do it when you were awake, but that was quite rude. That was your choice. But I don't know where this had come from because they were quite open about talking about things. But I can remember when the nurse came, I hadn't started my periods, and I was dreading the nurse asking. I was like, if she asks, I'll just put my hand up. Even though it was a secret, everybody was secretly also monitoring each other's puberty development.
Yes.
So your first bra, your first period, your first pubic hair?
I remember the first day I went to school wearing a bra, and I got to about lunchtime and I thought, I can't be having this. Felt like I was in a harness, and it would have been the smallest, lightest little cotton thing.
Do you remember your first period?
Not really. I remember being terrified about it starting because, as you know, I went to a posh school. I was a scholarship kid at a posh school. And so we had a lovely indoor swimming pool. And because it was there, we had to go swimming twice a week. And I was terrified that I would start my period while I was swimming, and the whole swimming pool would be covered in blood. It would be like Jaws shortly after an attack. Yeah, Carrie, Jaws, all of that. And it would be humiliating and absolutely disgusting. And we'd all be swallowing my blood. I've taken it to a bit of an extreme there, Sarah.
No, I totally get that your innards would be on show somehow and everybody would know. But I do remember my first period because I started my periods when I was on a school cruise.
A school cruise? Did you go to school in Monte Carlo?
It was the SS Uganda, and they did these educational cruises. It was about 2 years to save up for it. We went to Delphi, we went to Pompeii. The things I really took away from that cruise were me starting my period, a lad from South London that I really fancied, and all the lyrics of Gordon is a Moron.
So it was educational.
I couldn't really tell you what we did or what we found out. But I started my periods, and then I remember not knowing how many sanitary towels to go through. And they were those ones, you're probably too young for this, where you had to wear a sanitary belt and you looped it onto a sanitary belt with 2 safety pins. Do you remember that?
No, they were before I was active, period-wise.
It was absolutely positively medieval. You had to kind of strap yourself up in it. And I remember coming back, my mum met me off the bus and I was telling my mum about starting my periods, and she went, that is called your menarche. Your menarche is the start of your periods. Your menopause is the end of it.
I've never heard that word before, menarche. The thing that worried me about the whole lot, apart from, the flooding a swimming pool with blood, learning about what sex was, which I did get a bit more information about that when somebody brought a copy of the Thornbirds to school. But the whole sex, periods, puberty, the thing that scared me the most was tampons. I was just horrified. None of the rest of it worried me. Well, it worried me in a normal way, but tampons, it was like, you are, and you shove it up there. Oh no, how will that even work?
I loved tampons. I couldn't wait to start using tampons. I don't know if you remember, there used to be a little plastic case that you could get.
Yeah. I
thought that was the ultimate in sophistication, to have a little 2 tampon carrier in your bag.
Yeah.
I can remember getting a tampon stuck once. I went down to tell my mother, and her and my auntie went, oh, we'll help you get it out. And I was like, no, right, I think I'll just go back and live upstairs forever. I thought if the tampon went up, it could suddenly maybe free flow in your body and just
into your bloodstream, come out your eyes.
Yeah. You could sneeze one day and it would come out. But that's not how the lady's body works.
Well, talking about getting stuck, one of my friends told me about, this isn't a me thing, honestly, when she had quite a lot too much to drink and she was changing a tampon and she accidentally popped one up her bum.
Oh, for God's sake.
When she returned from her trip to the toilet, she became aware that there was a period was happening, and she thought, well, what's going on here? And on the return trip to the bathroom, that's where she realised her mistake.
You put things up your bum, they can just go up and get stuck. That's why people end up going to casualty, because they've fallen on a carrot.
2 of my favourite up the bum stories, and I know we've gone slightly off topic, but it's worth repeating, is when a friend's mum, who was a nurse, was telling us about a lad had come in to casualty and he had a Diet Coke can lodged up his bottom. And she said, oh, the thing that upset me was that it was Diet Coke. You think he'd have treated himself to full fat, wouldn't you? That was her take home, which I thought was just wonderful. And my other favourite things being stuck up the bum story is the one that we experienced together, Sarah, which I shall leave to you to tell.
Well, no, it was the nurse. It was the Irish nurse, junior doctor, senior nurse. I thought I was having a heart attack or a stroke, and he was just absolutely lovely.
This is when you and I had a trip to London, one of our adventures, and you took ill.
I got really hot and bothered, and I think both you and me thought I was going to die. I gave you the password for my phone in case I died.
And I was worried because normally you're in charge and I'm very happy to be your follower, Sarah. I really am. I was thinking, oh, shit, this isn't how it works.
And I thought I was going to die in a bistro with a bacon and avocado bagel and a bunch of very, very camp waiters.
There's worse places to go, Sarah.
If I'd woken up, I'd have gone, I'm in heaven.
We went to the A&E.
It was so good. And they tested me for everything. And there just was not anything wrong with me at all. And I was so embarrassed. And he said, oh, you needn't be embarrassed. Because the other day, a girl came in and she got a One Direction mannequin. It was a doll, yes. He said, I had to hold it while she was on the stretcher being moved into casualty. And I said, which one was it? And he went, oh, it was Niall, the Irish one.
The Irish one of One Direction in doll form lodged up there. So if we think about now, we're at the point where we have periods are normal, and we're going into the time where we're becoming active, annually active, just completely paranoid all the time that I was pregnant. Snog somebody and think, oh, what if I'm pregnant?
I remember somebody saying to me, a cousin thought she was pregnant and this lad had came over her handbag. Not unless it's actually attached to her fallopian tubes. I don't think that's an issue. I remember waiting for my period with bated breath. Oh my God, what am I going to do? And just the relief when your period arrives. But then it's the other way around when you're trying to get pregnant. You live and die by your periods in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, I got pregnant as soon as I'd come off the pill. We wanted a load of children. I wanted a house full of children. And that didn't happen. I got pregnant lots of other times. Getting pregnant wasn't a problem, but staying pregnant was. So I had 5 miscarriages at various different points of pregnancy after I had our lad. And so I was either pregnant or kind of grieving for about 5 years. And it was awful. When your period comes and it's not meant to, and it's not a period, it's a miscarriage. That's a whole other kind of relationship you have with your body. My experience was each time I was going to have a miscarriage, I'd feel like the insides of my body were pushing down. And there could be no blood coming or anything like that, but it'd just feel like something's going to happen, at various different points, depending on how pregnant I was. I would either have to go to hospital and they'd do a little operation, and it was all very bleak. But when my husband and me decided that we weren't going to spend any more of our lives being just really sad about the family that we didn't have and just fully embrace the family that we had, me, him and our lad, we already loved that, but we weren't able to enjoy it because we weren't the family that we'd planned. And once we decided that, no, it's us, it's the 3 of us, we can't spend any more time wishing that our family was something else and just going to properly 100% go for the family that we are. It was sad. It was also kind of a freedom.
Yeah.
And not long after that, going back to periods, I had a coil put in and then I didn't have periods anymore. I had a Mirena coil put in. So as soon as I say coil, in my head, it was like a slinky. They were going to pop a slinky up and it was this enormous sort of contraption. If not a slinky, it was going to be like one of those posh bathroom radiators. Pop one of them up so it'd keep me warm in winter and cool in summer. But that isn't what happens at all. It's something that really worked well for me. When I got that put in, and you've to have them changed every 5 years, it just stopped my periods, and I haven't had periods since then, which is absolutely ace. And I know that there's a huge kind of area of the female experience and the nightmare bits of the female experience that I just don't have because I don't have periods. It is really painful to have it put in. And when it's changed, it's so painful that they put 2 nurses up the head end to hold your hand and to constantly ask you if you're all right. And then there's a doctor down the other end sorting it out, which I suspect if that was happening to men, there would be anaesthetic.
But I started talking about that. I had a coil put in. It was absolutely dreadful. It wasn't a Mirena coil. It was another sort. And I had to have it taken out. And by that time, the damage was done. And I have experienced menstrual flooding, which is just unbelievable.
Fertility and pregnancy, total nightmare for me. But periods, I do feel like I've got off quite lightly.
So I started in my 30s having menstrual flooding. And basically what that means, it is a bit like your nightmare of the swimming pool. You can literally be standing and suddenly the insides of your uterus will just tip out. It can be down your legs, it can be on the floor, it can be all over the bathroom. I'm really happy if the second and third day of my period take place on a weekend or a holiday, because I don't have to go anywhere. You don't want to stay overnight with people. You can sit down on a nice pale blue chair and then there'll be the exact bloody imprint of your vulva. You can't do anything. An interesting thing is I was once at work and I was sitting around with a group of women. We talked about our experience of menstrual flooding and it felt quite liberating. It was quite a long time ago, before people were writing and talking about this sort of stuff on the radio and on TV and all the rest of it. I was told that I had menstrual flooding because I was obese. A friend of mine was told that she had menstrual flooding because she'd never had children. Someone else was told she had menstrual flooding because she'd had twins. Someone else was told she had menstrual flooding because she was very sporty and very, very active. So basically, it felt like whatever you are, this is your fault. Because nobody was really interested in why it happened and nobody cared about it. I sometimes feel like, Lady Macbeth hears the smell of the blood still. I can go to work with 3 sets of the same clothing, black tights, black shorts, black skirt. And when I've bled through all of those, I go home. It's horrible. Having said that, I care less about talking about it. Since it's become more of an open subject, it was my dread. It tired me out thinking about it. It tired me out strategizing my day so that I wouldn't let anyone know that I was menstruating and that I was flooding. Everything had to be worked out: where I was sitting, who I was sitting next to, where I was walking, what I was wearing, absolutely everything.
Is it out of the realms of possibility that you could have said to whoever, I'm experiencing menstrual flooding, I'll have to go and change in 5 minutes. Can I put this towel down before I sit down? Would that have been the worst thing?
I can do that with some people. And I think now I feel much more confident about that. But it has taken a long time to get round it. And it's not like I'm doing it on purpose. I'm not doing this to upset anyone. It's just happening to me. And I don't have a way of talking about it. And I just wish more people would talk about it. I feel it's important for me to talk about it in an empowered way, because it is so debilitating. It takes out so much of your energy.
Isn't it interesting, this idea of menstrual blood having some element of shame around it, or when other blood doesn't? Did you see that TV show, I May Destroy You? There's a bit in it where she is looking at her period and it's bits of, it looks like liver, that sort of period where sometimes things have got so heavy that its chunks are coming out. And I don't know if it's her looking at it or her partner looking at it, but they're absolutely kind of investigating this stuff that's come out of her with no concern and no shame around it. And I found that, and that's the first time I've ever seen that on telly, it being acknowledged that it isn't like a bottle of blood comes out, sometimes there's chunks. And I found that really liberating to see.
There's a line in a Joe Orton play, I think it's Entertaining Mr. Sloan, and this is a gay man writing in the 1960s, which maybe gives him permission to do this. I think it's Entertaining Mr. Sloan. Somebody will know better than me. But there's a line where his landlady talks about the clots that come out in her period, and one of them's in the shape of Africa. And I remember seeing that in the theatre and absolutely like roaring with laughter, and then realising I was the only one, because everybody else was absolutely horrified. And the people I was with were horrified and shocked. But I was like, yes.
Why is period blood and clots and all of that business, why is there this idea that it's somehow dirty?
Isn't it the whole thing that women are dirty and wrong? And, you know, there are cultures in Nepal, for example, there's period huts where women are supposed to be isolated. In Orthodox Judaism, women need not to be near their husband when they're menstruating, and they need to have a ritual bath before they can be back with their husband. There's all sorts of rituals. It's so deeply ingrained that there's something not right about it.
What I don't get is that if you're somebody who gets periods, that's on paper saying that you are fertile, that you can produce another human being. Shouldn't that make women of childbearing age the most powerful beings on the planet, because they are capable of growing another human inside them? That's chuffing bonkers that women can do that. And yet this thing, this signal, the period, that shows that you are capable of doing that is seen as secret or shameful, or even, like, on the better end of it, private.
I mean, maybe because it is powerful and is therefore frightening. It's like there was graffiti somewhere in the 1970s about war is menstruation envy. We want to be able to bleed and not die. And I think that's that fearfulness, that otherness and that magicness of women that is so very, or has been so very frightening for some men in charge.
Do you remember that really frightening image of Donald Trump and a load of old men when they were deciding about, it was about abortion rights? And it was so kind of Handmaid's Tale that I just found it terrifying. And it did make me think, what are they so frightened of? Is it the power that women have, the biological power that women of childbearing age have, which they can never have?
My mum always used to say, you always know who your mother is, but you can never be sure who your father is. And I think if you've got a patriarchal society that relies on your blood relatives inheriting your property and wealth, that must be terrifying. That must be terrifying. And I understand, but this is completely anecdotal, that there were some cultures before people put two and two together and realized that men had something to do with producing children, where women were honoured in a different way as the givers of life. I mean, that would be a nice place to be, wouldn't it? But, it's Eve's curse. It's the curse. Eve's punishment for transgressing.
Just to take us on to a lighter note, Sarah, what is your favourite words for period?
I like on the blob.
On the blob. I've got painters and decorators in.
I like
Is it painters or is it painters and decorators? Have I added an element?
Plasterers.
I've got plumbers in.
I've got a DIY man in, and I've also got my period. I like visitor, and I always think that bit in Lady Macbeth's speech, no compunctious visitings of nature shall shake my fell purpose. Make thick my blood, she says. She's asking to stop menstruating. I love that idea that even back in Shakespeare's time, people knew what a visitor was.
Ant flow's coming to stay.
And jam rags.
I don't like that term, jam rags. It's a sanitary towel with some red jam on it. No, don't make me eat that. Don't spoil bread and jam for me. I'm very, very open about periods and blood and all that stuff. I don't want to eat it.
No, absolutely not. But the other thing is that also it is a bit of a first world problem. I mean, again, my dear departed mother used to say, you're overnourished. That's why you have such heavy periods. You've got to be a certain weight to menstruate. And in some cultures, women are either pregnant or breastfeeding and aren't menstruating. The fact that nowadays, in a developed world, we have so few pregnancies is unusual or different. Think about Queen Anne with her 17 children that died. People had lots and lots of children. Yeah. And so they didn't menstruate as much as we all do.
I've become more aware of period poverty in the past few years. And I've found out about it from a group I was teaching, a group of young women, and there was some of them weren't in the class. And it was because, as I found out from their colleagues, because it was an open secret, that they couldn't afford sanitary products and so didn't come to college on the periods. And I was outraged by that, the idea that a biological norm for this group of women would hold them back from their education. And after that, I found out that there were brilliant organisations, the Red Box Project, which I think is hilarious, that campaigned to make sure that sanitary products, tampons and towels, were provided for free in all schools and colleges throughout most of the UK. And from 2020, that's a thing that the government is giving funding to do. So if you're listening to this and you're at a state-funded school or college, then you are able to get free period products. If you're not, then go and speak to somebody in student services and go and ask them about it. And if they're saying that it's not available, ask them why not.
Yeah, they are so expensive and somebody's making a profit out of it. Those designer wings don't come cheap, do they?
I bought some sanitary towels only last week, and it's not because I have a period. They were 89p for 12, and they're the most enormous mattresses, like those ones where, you know, if a stuntman falls off a building. And it's because I've started going to spin class and it's breaking my vagina. I have to pad myself out, otherwise I can't walk. The saddle is so unforgiving. I mean, I can't do it.
My mum and dad, when they were both at home, living at home, and my dad had fallen over and he'd had a really strange fall and he'd cracked open the top of his head and he doesn't remember doing it and we don't know how he did it. And my mum said, it's all right, I've bandaged it up. And I went in to see him, and what she'd done is she'd found a sanitary towel somewhere in the house, as you say, like a big mattress one, and she'd put it across the wound, and then she tied it on with a bandage, and then she'd fitted on a woolen hat over it. And he was like, he's fine. I was like, no, this is absolutely not fine. We have to take it to casualty.
Well, I think that sounds very jazzy. Sarah, let's move on to the place where both of us are heading, to the end of periods, the menopause. So my perspective is that because I don't have periods anyway from having my Mirena coil, I'd have no way of properly knowing that I'm starting with the menopause. And I feel sure that I am because I keep getting these little flushes. First off, I feel like I'm going to be sick. And then all of a sudden, it's like there is a volcano has started inside me and I'm pinging with sweat. And at the moment, they last a few minutes and then it's over with. And I'm having them a couple of times a week. But I feel like this is the start of the menopause.
So you're 48, aren't you?
Yeah.
So I'm 56 and I am still menstruating once a month. And it's unbelievable. I've had every symptom there is. I've had hot flushes, I've had tiredness, I've had brain fog, I've had period pain, I've had flooding, I've had all of those things. And yet my menopause seems to be no further forward. They referred me to a gynecologist because they got really worried. Because my periods are so heavy, I have very bad anemia. They were worried that something had gone terribly wrong. And I said, it'll just be my periods. The doctor went, still having your periods? And I said, yes. And he said, have you had a hysterectomy? And I said, if I'd had a hysterectomy and I was still having my periods, I would let you know about that. And so they sent me to a gynecologist and I went to see the gynecologist and she was absolutely lovely. And she said, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm still having my period. She said, oh, 46, 47, 48, sometimes even 50 people have their periods too. And I said, no, I'm 56. And she went, oh.
And no one wants to hear that response from a doctor.
She kept asking me, am I sure, A, that I'm 56 and B, that I'm still having periods? Yes, both of those things. I have a birth certificate. As luck would have it, I was menstruating there and then. So I could show her, which I did.
Look at this.
A friend of mine said, oh, well, my mum, she had her periods till she was 59. And I said, oh, God. But was she all right after they stopped? And she went, no, she died at 59.
That's why they stopped.
They stopped with death. I mean, I could still have a baby. That would amuse me no end.
I'm sure it's worth having a baby, Sarah, just for the gag of it.
Told you. I'm going to call it menopause.
Because we're assuming it'd be a girl. So we could pass on the anecdote. This scenario, Sarah, I've somehow made myself your life partner. It's we. I am the father.
That would be lovely and no less medically improbable.
Yeah, should we have a baby, Sarah?
So I feel like I'm on the verge of menopause and I feel like I've had all the menopause visitations, but without my period stopping. I'm quite proud of it. There is a thing called late onset menopause, which affects obese women. So it's not that much of a mystery. Fat produces estrogen. So there you go.
So we've looked at how we found out about periods, starting our periods, fear of getting pregnant, and then how much we didn't enjoy our periods arriving. First off, because we were trying to get pregnant. Second off, because we were waiting for menopause. So I think we've taken you, listener, through our entire period experience.
And it is that thing about if men had periods, they'd be like, well, I'm a 10 tampon a day, man.
Maybe we should start that, says. Yeah, how many you got through today, love?
45.
Oh, I'm a 5 pints a day girl, me. of blood.
It's almost like there's nothing you can say or do without upsetting or offending people.
Let's talk about clots or period clots all the time, Sarah. Oh, people will be thrilled. We'll make that many new friends. This has been Cecil and Simons, the two Sarahs. We've been exploring periods. Thank you for listening, and do join us again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Middle-Aged Fat Lasses podcast. Subscribe now to make sure you don't miss an episode. And to find out more, visit middleagedfatlass.com.